I process all of my deer at home in a relatively small kitchen, and I've been doing it for years. You can do it too if you have a few basic items of equipment. I'm going to talk about what you need to acquire. Some of it you may already have that's going to enable you to process an entire deer right at home, even in a small kitchen. Of course, you'll need a good quality cooler to keep the quarters and bone out venison cold until you can process it. You can actually put this off a few days to process your venison as long as you keep it between 30 and 40 degrees. Keep the ice fresh. You don't want the venison to freeze before you process it, but you don't want it to get above 40 degrees. Of course, you're going to need a good quality knife for processing the venison. This can just be your skinning knife if that's what you've got, but you might want to acquire a couple of extra pieces as you have time and money, like a good fillet knife, like a boning knife. Extra knives like that will make it easier when you're slicing up and trimming the venison as you go through the process. The trimming and processing is going to be so much easier if your knives are sharp. So you're going to need some kind of tool for sharpening your knives. Now, I'm personally not very good at using a whetstone, so I have an electric knife sharpener. This one is a Work Sharp. It works very well. There's many other brands made, but whatever you have on hand, make sure you've got something to keep your blade sharpened up as you're processing your venison. You're going to need a cutting board. Doesn't have to be expensive. I like this one because the arms are adjustable, so I can fit this to the sink in my kitchen. It mounts over the sink. That way it saves counter space as I'm working, and it makes cleanup a whole lot easier. As you're processing the hindquarters and the larger pieces of venison, you're going to be boning and separating the meat. You're going to be trimming off parts that you want to discard. You're going to be separating the venison into larger roasts, as well as pieces that you're going to grind. So you're going to want a set of bowls like this one to organize the venison as you're working and keep it separate on the counter. Probably the most expensive piece of basic equipment that you're going to have is some kind of grinder. Now, this is my grinder. It's actually an attachment for a KitchenAid cake mixer, and I have ground a lot of deer through this little grinder. Having a grinder means that you'll be able to make a diversity of different recipes, from tacos to spaghetti to hamburger and on and on. They certainly make cheaper ones than this that are hand crank manual grinders, but they're labor intensive. And they make larger and more expensive grinders than this one. It's just up to you how much you want to spend and how much space you have for storage of the equipment. A super cheap item, but extremely handy, is a little kitchen scale like this one. This is my 1 pound kitchen scale. I use this to portion out ground venison into 1 pound packages. So you can use it to customize your packages for any portion size that works for you. For a larger family, you might want bigger packages. So I use freezer paper for packaging all my venison. You certainly can use a vacuum sealer. I didn't go that route because it's another piece of equipment to buy and store, and personally I just don't like all the plastic waste. So I use freezer paper, and it works very well for me. Now, I learned a long time ago that even though the box of freezer paper has a serrated edge for cutting the paper, that's extremely difficult and frustrating to do when you're packaging a lot of venison. So I got myself a freezer paper dispenser, and man, it has saved me a lot of headaches. Not very expensive, and really not all that bulky. It folds up for storage. So if you're going to get serious about this, I'd recommend a freezer paper dispenser. You're going to want freezer tape for wrapping up your packages. And again, I learned a lesson a long time ago. You're going to want one of these weighted freezer tape dispensers. This makes it easy for you to grab a piece of tape with one hand and get the length you need while you're juggling a whole bunch of other things, venison and freezer paper. This really makes it easy, so I have enjoyed having this. You probably already have this one, but a Sharpie for marking your venison packages to let you know what's in the package, what type of venison. You want to put the date on there, whether it's a buck or doe. And you might want to add, if you've got several hunters in the family, whose deer that is, because later down the road when you're preparing a meal, you can celebrate again the hunter who provided that night's venison meal. Now, with just that basic equipment, I've processed a lot of deer in my own kitchen. But you're going to find that there's other add-ons you might want to acquire, like this cuber attachment that I got for our KitchenAid mixer. Relatively inexpensive, easy to store, and you drop a steak in the slot, it turns it into cube steak. That's been very nice to have. There's dehydrators, there's sausage stuffers, there's larger grinders. Lots of equipment you might want to look at as your budget and time and space allow. With the equipment I just showed you, it takes me about 2 hours to go from a cooler full of quartered venison to all cleaned up and all venison packaged and in the freezer. And I get a lot of enjoyment out of that process. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, you will too. and you're going to find that processing your own deer at home in your own kitchen is easier than you think.